and credulity is en masse inculcated right across the country. Millions of people know no better. If you're Joseph Stalin, who, by the way, this is an opportunist point of mine, but I have to mention it, was a long-time seminary student, had rehearsed to be a priest. You shouldn't be...
Was he not expelled?
I think he may have just cleared out, but
I think he
one
was
way or
expelled,
another.
yeah.
But you shouldn't be, if you're Joseph Stalin, you shouldn't be in the dictatorship business if you can't exploit a great pool of credulity and servility like that. There you have it. It's waiting. All you need to do is say, I'm the new Tsar. And what happens? A new inquisition, a heresy hunt, show trials. The traitors are among us. The heretics are here, trying to poison the wells. Miracles. Lysenko, our great new biologist, has shown how we can grow 25-foot wide tomatoes that will feed an entire family, Stakhanovite saints. The entire thing is completely replicated and collapses, as the Inquisition did. And so now,
so Stalin is murderous because he's an imperfect
well, it's
atheist?
a replication. It's a surrogate for the same thing. It's a replication of a counterfeit, or if you like, a true bill copy of the same thing. But here's what you need to have a level playing field between your point and mine. You'd need to find a society hitherto pious and devout, and organic and stable. That adopted the views of, and Incal tried to teach its children the principles of Lucretius, Epicurus, Spinoza, Galileo, Einstein, Thomas Jefferson, Thomas Paine, Bertrand Russell, the first person to, the greatest atheist of his day, and the first person to work out that Lenin was a new god, by the way, to adopt those teachings and then to see if that society fell into famine, war, tyranny, torture, gulag, and so on. That would be the fair test, and that test is yet to come. But I believe myself that we can recover the lost connection, the one that monotheism severed between Athens and Jerusalem. And we could get back a world where philosophy was valued. The beauty of science was considered worth studying, worth revering even. Where literature would be the key to the study of ethics and morality. And if you wanted the transcendent, you'd have love and sex and music. And you wouldn't need any supernatural permission for any of this nonsense. Well, I think I miss it terribly. I feel as if something was torn away from me before I was born by the loss of that. But we're smart enough to get it back. If only we will leave behind the hideous nonsense of the holy books and the vile preachments of those who want the world to come to an end.
Well, I'm for that. I'm for that.
Good.
Let's see. On the other hand, has there been such a place?
Well,
I mean, I hate to sound like I'm speaking on behalf of our fallen nature, but has there been such?
Well,
a
the
place?
country I happen to be. May I use an expression?
Are we going to get Andalusia in Spain now?
May I just say something that
Yes, please.
I hope doesn't seem too populist, but an expression I've been waiting for a long time to employ. Not to you so much, but to you too, but to the audience. My fellow Americans. I've been wanting it a long time to say this. I took my oath of citizenship last month on the 13th of April, which is my birthday and also Mr. Jefferson's birthday. I'm his biographer. At his memorial in Washington, D.C. by the Tidal Basin, just before the cherry blossoms were blown away by the next breeze. And I was able to take my oath and say that I specifically wanted to take it to the only constitution ever in human history that doesn't mention God, and doesn't mention religion except to separate it from politics.
Right.
And to the preamble to the Declaration, which mentions only a creator but no intervening God. no personal God, no intervening one. And to say how extraordinary it is that most Americans, born to this right and this beauty, don't appreciate it because it comes to them as a birthright. And the Virginia Statute on Religious Freedom, the basis of our fantastic First Amendment, means a huge amount to me. No tithe can be paid by any American to any church. The government has no right to tell anyone how or where or in which way to worship at all. And that in response to the petitioners of Danbury, Connecticut, the president wrote back to them and said there will be always a wall of separation to protect your rights and your freedoms. So I have a new slogan. Mr. Jefferson, build up that wall.
But
I hope to be joined in this slogan.
Yes. Well, actually, I join you in that slogan because I think one of the curious things about and remarkable things about Jefferson's genius and one of its unintended consequences is that religion, as in all its variations, has flourished behind that wall here in the United States as it has nowhere else. That religion, severed from state support and from the notion of the official church, has flourished here.
Tocqueville was right, as are you. Yeah. If it's a voluntary association, it can be very pluralistic. After all, you do know, so you don't you say? Because you know, but I wonder if anyone here knows. Who were the Baptists of Danbury, Connecticut, writing about to the president? Who were they afraid of? Who did they think was going to persecute them? Why did they want a wall? The Congregationalists of Danbury, Connecticut.
Vicious congregation.
That's who they were afraid of.
Vicious bands of roving congregations.
Who was killing the Quakers in Pennsylvania? The Presbyterians of Pennsylvania. In Maryland, at the time of before the Constitutional Convention, you could only be in office if you were a Catholic. In New York, you couldn't be in office if you were a Catholic. Right? In Georgia, you had to say you were a Protestant, whatever that meant. In Rhode Island, you could not be a Jew and hold office. In Connecticut, you could be a Jew and hold office, but you couldn't be a Catholic and hold office. It was going to be religious chaos on the European scale. Unbelievably, we had the Philadelphia Enlightenment that said, no, we don't have to go through this again. The United States will be different about this. We won't allow it. There will be no such test. There will be no such. People should know only how lucky they are. I think it's of the absolutely first importance to defend it.
Yeah, Christopher, let me ask you this, in all seriousness. This is a profoundly post 9/11 book.
Yes.
You wrote this book, I think, because of what occurred on 9/11 and because of the struggle that we now confront with fundamentalist jihadist Islam, or if you've called it Islamofascism.
Yes.
Okay. Is it possible that in making the argument there and in trying and in giving that argument as much breadth as possible, you've overlooked the virtues of religious pluralism in a country that enforces, albeit imperfectly and with continual struggle, separation of church and state? It's as if this book, for all of your admiration of Jefferson, sometimes behaves as if that wall did not exist here, that it had never been made to work anywhere. Is it all conceivable?
There is a problem with having said as I did that religious pluralism is a great thing in itself, and can only be guaranteed by a secular state. The point the religious
Absolutely.
just keep on not getting. You see, if only this state was all Baptist, we'd be fine. They want to teach creation in school. They say, all right, I'll teach you the Hindu creation myth to your children. And now are you happy? They say, no, I'm sure not. I say, well, you asked for it. Now you've got it. There is a problem of that kind, which is reverse ecumenicism. I'll tell you what I mean by that, apparently arcane statement. I'm sure everyone here remembers the assault on the tiny European democracy of Denmark last year. Why was the Danish economy subjected to a campaign of international sabotage backed by not just movements but states? Why were its embassies burned down in countries where demonstrations are not normally allowed? Why was all this? Because its prime minister could not be forced or persuaded to censor cartoons in the afternoon press in Copenhagen because it's against Danish law for him to do this. Right? So, you and I are members of this great profession. Mm-hmm. Did the Los Angeles Times publish those cartoons?
No, it didn't. But I wrote a column in the Los Angeles Times that began, "The editor of the Los Angeles Times will not allow you to see these cartoons."
Voila.
And went on to argue that it was a great breach of faith with the people of Denmark and with Danish democracy. And that column appeared as one of two I did about this and about the cowardly surrender.
It was one of about 5 that did, and I remember it vividly because you and I were in such a small minority. Mm. In a media totally dominated now by image, totally dominated by images. Yeah. It was not considered appropriate to tell the American public, here's a story that's all about the fight over some pictures, but we're not going to show you what the pictures are.
Listen, as a religious believer myself, I'm totally unaffected by these things.
No, but wait, because it's not you I'm trying to persuade. Yeah. That's the main point. The image-dominated press said, no, we're not going to show you. Neither out of solidarity with our Danish colleagues, which would be a good point, or just to show you what the fuss is about. No, they wouldn't. That's either out of fear of the religious, or it's out of fear of offending them, which comes to more or less the same thing. It's blackmail. In the United States of America, in 2006, there wasn't a single member of our profession in a position to make a decision who would stand up for one day to outright blackmail. And people say to me, why do you keep mentioning the extremists? I said, because the extremists are the tail that wag the whole dog. And my profession proves it. And your culture proves it, and you were humiliated by this. And it gets worse, because I write for a very small atheist magazine called Free Inquiry, and I'm published out of Amherst, Massachusetts, which did publish the cartoons. See, it's a responsibility. First, solidarity with the Danes. Second, people should see what the fuss is about. Borders Books takes our magazine off the rack. So you can't sell your magazine now. I've refused to read or speak in a Borders bookstore ever since. Least I could do. Unless they really, really, really offer me a lot of money. And a complete capitulation, a total capitulation. And people say, why do I focus on the extremists? Because the extremists have the initiative, and because, I haven't started yet, who condemned what? I remind you, individual Scandinavians were murdered everywhere from Afghanistan to Nigeria by this hysterical, prearranged campaign. 21 ambassadors from so-called Muslim states. How dare they call themselves Muslim? In what sense is Egypt a Muslim country? You can't denominate a country as religious. Waited upon His Holiness the Pope.
Well, and in fact, 2 leading Egyptian newspapers, as I pointed out in my column, did run the cartoons.
They're braver than American papers. But His Holiness the Pope condemned what? The cartoons. The State Department condemned the cartoons, not the violence, not the campaign of intimidation. The Archbishop of Canterbury condemned the cartoons. Every church I know of condemned the blasphemy of the cartoons, not the campaign of murder and sabotage and intimidation. In other words, ladies and gentlemen, the barbarians are not at the gate. They're not at the gate. They're well inside. And who held open the door for them? The other religious did. It was the same with Salman Rushdie. When the Ayatollah Khomeini offered money, publicly, in his own name, without shame, for suborning of murder of a novelist who wasn't an Iranian, who lived in England. A pretty radical attack on what we think we live by, what our Constitution stands for, what Mr. Jefferson, Mr. Paine thought it was worth fighting for. The Cardinal Archbishop of New York, the Chief Rabbi of Israel, His Holiness the Pope, the Archbishop of Canterbury, all condemned what? The novel, the author, for blasphemy. Now get used to this, because you may be living in the last few years where you can complain about it. Because the religious really mean this, you know. They are not just joking. They really mean to abolish everything you care about, and they want to take away everything you love and to destroy everything you have and to replace it with a Stone Age ideology